All right. Hey, everyone. Want to say hi to everybody coming from New York, Chicago, Minnesota, Colorado, LA, Hollywood, Oregon, Canada, wherever you may be. We're all making this work virtually. We want to welcome you to Digital Hollywood Intel Day. And, you know, I got a good deal on this shirt from the Olympics. We want to, you know, give a shout out to all the Olympic athletes that are going to have to wait a year. But we'll be there for you. You know, just take another year to get faster and jump higher. So what we wanted to do today is talk about virtual Hollywood production. This is on the virtual Hollywood production and immersive entertainment track. We have a great panel organized. We want to thank Digital Hollywood for inviting Intel, and we're helping out and kind of sponsoring the event. Just previous to our session, Lynn Comp did a presentation on visual experiences, and I think these are going to be available for rebroadcast. So definitely tune in and you know, check out the different panels that people are putting together. And we're, you know, really welcome to ideas and topics that people want to hear about. So with that, I think why don't we kick it off, and the panel, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? I'll start. Dan Monahan, I'm from Intel. I work in our visual cloud group and basically work with the ecosystem of software and services and hardware vendors to create visual cloud experiences like what we'll be talking about today. Chris?
Yeah, thanks very much, Dan. Chris Kostyk, I'm the Global Director of Business Development for Media Entertainment at CW Studio Cloud. And essentially we provide render to animation and visual effects studios along with co-location for storage and remote workstations.
Great. Thanks, Chris. My name is Kevin Ottemeyer. I am the Solutions Architect for the West Coast at Teradici. I cover all of our enterprise media and entertainment customers, and I focus around high graphics workloads specific to media entertainment and HPC. Happy to be here.
Me?
Yeah, I'm Ted.
Hi, I'm Ted. I'm the futurist at Paramount Pictures. I explore the intersection of new technology and storytelling as a pursuit, and in these days that pursuit is getting highly interesting in some very interesting and unusual ways.
All right, well, thank you guys for joining. We welcome everyone. I'm just going to do a quick share here. Let me see here. So we'll do this guy. So basically, just wanted to show, not too many slides, Victor. So when we talk about visual cloud, which Lynn covered in her talk previously, you know, it's a framework for enabling. It's not a product. It's, you know, Intel helping the ecosystem that provides services and software and hardware. And it's really around all the stuff that's happening now in the cloud around media. Media processing, you know, everyone's tuning in to their favorite over-the-top video channel, whether it be Netflix or Hulu or Disney or all of the above. Media analytics, analyze media in the cloud, immersive media, which is a topic that we'll bring in, cloud graphics and cloud gaming. And so in the topic that we have today, which is about virtual workstations in the cloud, just a quick, you know, level setting visual. And, you know, you can see I call these pandemic graphics because I don't quite have the tools I'm normally able to work with, but that's a plug to my boss. You'll hear later. Basically, you know, what the Hollywood is, you know, trying to get by just like all of us. You know, creatives are accessing, you know, their horsepower through virtual workstations in the cloud. And so the simple way to kind of describe this is you have a PC, could be a Nook or a laptop that connects over the cloud, and that's a connection. I drew that myself. To like a Xeon enabled cloud workstation that then connects you to your apps, your Maya and Blender and all the different video editing, all the apps that creatives need access to. And really, the key requirement is that they have their dual monitor support, and that they can see at full resolution. So 4K, have 60 frames where they can preview their work and see the quality with low latency. And really, the metric is that an artist doesn't really feel the impact of the remote workstation, because they may be drawing and interacting highly with the system. And so the next slide is just kind of like a quick configuration. So this is like kind of an artist workstation where these are actually both. A lot of times there's tablet kind of interfaces and drawing interfaces, and these can both actually be computers. These can be extended monitors. But here's an example setup. And going back to my pandemic graphics, it would be really nice if if my boss is out there. It would be really great if I could have better tools. And so just a little plug to be able to get access to one of these graphics workstations to beef up our graphics. But you can see how the artists kind of interact, multi-screen. They need to be able to draw and interact in high performance and high quality. So that's kind of the virtual workstation paradigm that we're going to be talking about in this presentation. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll hand it over to Chris.
Sure, thanks, Dan. I think maybe I'll jump into the sharing as well. So there we go. Can everybody see my screen there?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, a little bit about CW. So we're Fortune 191, 18 billion in revenue, and recently acquired the Studio Cloud business. Here's a selection of our top partners. We have global reach, reaching out and delivering to over 160 countries, and an extensive logistics team. But I'm here to talk a little bit about our Studio Cloud business and our origin. So a little over 7 years ago, we were approached by the studios in Vancouver to attract the Disney Marvel clients and work up to Vancouver. And in order to do that, you had to have 1,000 render nodes. And at that time, I don't think there were 1,000 render nodes in aggregate in Vancouver. So we put together a central data center where animation and visual effects studios could connect to directly and be able to, when idle, they could share their unused render nodes to other studios that needed the burst capability. So fast forward to today, and we have 7 data centers with over 100,000 cores, and we're now Studio Cloud powered by Intel. And there isn't a single Marvel feature film that hasn't touched Studio Cloud. So basically, clients, animation, visual effects studios connect over dark fiber. They are able to directly connect to dedicated air-gapped rack mount Intel servers, and then we meet all the security compliance for TPN, MPAA, and Marvel, Disney, etc. Basically, you pick a location, pick a term, and then you can scale up with Intel second generation Xeon processors with Optane data center persistent memory. The real, I guess, unique aspect to this is the cooperative approach that we've had. And again, where if you're idle, you can cross rent that capacity. So we have some visual effects studios right now that are facing some challenge with no production, no live action production, but then we have animation studios that are really busy working on deliverables for the streaming services. Here's a selection of some of those studios that are connecting to Studio Cloud today. But more just specific to what we've had to do to help our clients during COVID-19, we really had to pivot. And a major focus of that was a focus on helping our clients help their artists connect remotely from home, as Dan was highlighting there with remote workstations. So we partnered with Teradici on their Cloud Access Plus software, and we were really thankful for the 3-month subscriptions that that Teradici came to the market in order to help the studios during this time. We paired that with Intel NUC thin clients to really beef up the security so that every artist didn't have to use their own personal device. And then what was really interesting, I thought, was a number of the studios, the structure of a studio from a security standpoint is really to limit access to internet for artists in order to ensure the content is kept safe. But with all the artists now needing to connect remotely, bandwidth requirements really went through the roof. So overnight, we were spinning up burstable 10 gig internet services just through a cross connect to our clients. And that really smoothed out the kinks and the drop off in terms of that low latency workflow. So again, hats off, or tip of the hat to Teradici and what Intel's done in order to bring a commitment to the pandemic response with a $50 million initiative. And then just what does that mean whether the rubber hits the road? I know I'm at home with my children, and my daughter is 3 years old, and my son is 5, and to give them an outlet in order to be still productive at work and working, helping studios like Icon Creative have all their 400 artists working remotely meant that they could deliver Elena of Avalor and get more episodes and in fact an additional season going. Then we saw kind of a shift in the workflows, like as work is being pushed out and rescheduled. We definitely saw that impacting and requiring some pressure to get some short-term rentals. So we helped out studios like Method Visual Effects ramp up with some short-term rentals in Montreal so they could work on projects like Top Gun Maverick. At the same time, we're seeing a real crunch on the storage. With projects pushing, you really needed to make a mechanism where you could nearline that data so you can continue to access it and make changes to that work. And that's putting pressure on their production storage. So we've been spinning up next generation storage offerings, helping our clients leverage flexible consumption programs, OpEx programs like that. So I think that might be a good time just to hand it over to Teradici here and Kevin. I don't want to monopolize the time here.
All right, Chris. Yeah. Dan and Chris, thanks for the introduction. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Fantastic. Let me go ahead and get my presentation going here. Let me know if everybody can see that.
Looks good.
All right, fantastic. Again, thank you, Dan and Chris, for setting the table here. I think we have a lot of people on the phone here that have heard of Teradici before, or either have used their products in media entertainment, or are familiar with their endpoints. I wanted to go over really quickly, kind of a background of Teradici. Where did we come from? I know that we were behind OEMs and manufacturers for a very long time. We had a great product, but you never really heard the Teradici name. What we're talking about today is essentially the next generation of VDI. We hear about VDI all around. We hear it from other organizations, but we hear about an old way of doing things, a good enough experience. What Teradici is bringing to the table today with Cloud Access software is that next generation of VDI experience. It's no longer good enough. It's the best that you could possibly provide to your artists. So with that being said, I wanted to kind of discuss, where we came from. Teradici was born, around 16 years ago. We had a hardware solution which was widely used throughout media entertainment. It was called the remote workstation card. The remote workstation card was used to transform pixels from high graphics workstations to an endpoint of the customer's choosing. The majority of the solution was used on-prem in an environment where there was a secure data center, a workstation in that data center racked with our workstation card. and then traditionally a zero client, a Teradici zero client at the endpoint where the monitor, keyboard, and mouse was attached. The reason why we were so popular during this time was because of the way that we actually transform our pixels, and we take the raw data from the GPUs, not traditionally like we've seen in the past with other VDIs. We have our own proprietary protocol called PC over IP. That proprietary protocol takes the exact stream from that GPU and sends the same quality of color, resolution, and frame rates that you would expect to have with a workstation underneath your desk. So what we did over the years is we partnered with a couple different people with our PC over IP protocol. One of those was VMware. VMware actually built their Horizon platform off of PC over IP. If you didn't know that, they've been around for quite some time, since 2009. VMware still today uses PC over IP, quite an older version of our protocol to do their Horizon platform. We then partnered with Workspaces. Everybody knows Amazon Workspaces. They know it's a great solution out there, but not a lot of people know that the underlying protocol that is used in Workspaces is actually PC over IP. Again, a great example of us partnering, being a partner-first company, enabling our partners to be successful in whatever endeavor that they do, whether that be DAS or an on-prem solution like Horizon. We then, of course, partnered with the CSPs. That was our next play, right? We wanted to make sure that we had a good relationship with Microsoft, with GCP, with AWS, and what was born out of that was our cloud access software solution. So essentially, it would be a digital version of our remote workstation card solution that we developed back in 2004. So instead of needing a remote workstation card in a machine, we now allow our customers to simply install an agent into the operating system of that machine, no longer needing or being constrained by the hardware of our card, but being able to now use that both in a bare metal, virtualized, and private and public cloud solution. So therefore, you take Teradici wherever you go, being able to produce that high fidelity, color corrected, high resolution, high frame rate experience anywhere. And then, fast forward to 2019, where we have a very mature product in cloud access software. We've partnered with some of the most amazing people in our industry, Intel, CDW, NVIDIA, Nutanix, all of them, great partners of ours. With that being said, Teradici actually has 13 million seats of the PC over IP protocol out there. Not a lot of people know that, of course, because, like you said, we were behind our manufacturers for a while, enabling them to be successful. Teradici has now come out of the shadows of that and has created an amazing product in cloud access software. And we've also continued to develop our zero clients. We have 3 million of those out there today, connecting either to VMware Horizon, Workspaces, or our own cloud access software. Our partners are amazing, and we've had great successes with them in the past. They've enabled us to get into some amazing customers, like a lot of the Fortune 500 customers around the world. But as it stands today, what we're seeing is a massive trend, either accelerated by the fact that we've had a crisis over the last few months. But this trend is what we've been seeing before that, right? We see a traditional workstation in media entertainment. An artist sits at his desk, his or her desk. They have a mouse and keyboard attached. They have a powerful GPU and a really expensive machine underneath their desk that they work on a daily basis. That machine, of course, is bound by the constraints of hardware. Not necessarily the most secure solution in the world, because IP can leak from locations that are physical underneath the desk. So what we've seen a move to the private data center. With our remote workstation cards was probably the first generation of that. People slowly making that migration off of the workstation cards into our cloud access software is what we're seeing happening today. Now, there's a wide variety of topologies that we're seeing our customers adopt. Private data center is absolutely one of them with our cloud access software, and public cloud is the other. Or sitting in between there in a hybrid solution, where they have some on-prem resources that they like to utilize, and they have some public cloud resources, whether they be long-standing resources or burst resources needing on demand. And what our cloud access agent and cloud access software gives them the ability to do is to leverage both of those at the same time, not needing to worry about where the hardware resides and who is sitting at that desk. And of course, with that being said, here are the 3 main deployments we see with cloud access software. We see that in a virtualized state, as I explained before. We see it in a non-virtualized workstation, bare metal scenario, physical PC, if you'd like to say that. And in that physical PC, we've seen during this last couple of months during the pandemic, we've actually seen a lot of people simply install our Cloud Access Agent into a physical machine and get it up and running immediately. As we know, this all came upon us very quickly. None of us were really prepared for what was going to happen in these last couple of months. So the flexibility of being able to simply install our agent into a physical machine that already existed in the office and remote that to the artist that is working from home, one, allowed them to continue working and creating content, and two, gave them the ability to migrate and move wherever necessary. So this is a great example of some of the things that we're able to provide for our customers, either existing customers or the wide variety of new customers we've taken on in the last couple of months. With that being said, you can see in the summary of what a cloud access software architecture actually looks like. It can reside anywhere. It can be in physical, it can be in virtual, it can be in public and private cloud, and all be consumed by a wide variety of endpoints. Whether those endpoints be a mobile client, a tablet, a physical PC that you have at home or in the office, a thin client or zero client, or a BYOD device by simply installing our software client onto that machine. So we give, again, the flexibility of not only allowing our customers to install our agent anywhere, but also install our clients in a wide variety of locations. And with that being said, I wanted to go ahead and pass it off and just let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin and Ted. I think Kevin, if you could stop sharing, and then I think we need to click our video back on.
I stopped sharing, or can you see that from your side?
Yes, I think it's good now.
Great.
And
I gotta
we're
turn it back on. There we go.
there he is. Thanks.
So I will break with tradition and not share slides. I will talk about what the three of you all referred to and how we as the end user of all this are taking full advantage of what you've been building and enhancing and cleaning up the rough edges on. And I think maybe the first thing to note that's probably obvious to a lot of us, but still worth stating, is that if everything that's going on now and our ability to do what you guys just referred to so seamlessly, cleanly, and effectively was a reaction to this current situation, it would have been a complete disaster. What's really going on is that this has been happening for, let's call it 40, 45 years in some way, shape, or form, right? Yeah. Building networks, building network infrastructure, building all the appliances that run on these various service layers and enhancing them and cleaning them up over many, many, many generations with hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of infrastructure being poured into that from Intel as this sort of global attack point, right? And then you guys on the service and provider side solving the problem. So here we are looking at the situation in the world, right? And I think a lot of us would tend to agree with this statement. I've been doing a lot of these video chats and a lot of these kind of conferences, and I tend to start them with kind of a generally positive statement that if you remove the unbelievably high cost in human lives of what's going on here and try, even though that's not really possible, but try and separate from that from the equation, I think a lot of us would look at where we sit today and say, we're great with this. This could have not happened sooner. The idea that we can effectively use these networks and all the appliances that exist to completely run our operations with very little disruption is kind of an amazing thing to think about, right? Now, within the fissures of a movie studio, which I work for, we still have the challenge of physical production, right? We still have the challenge of how do we go out and shoot things, which is something, if you guys want to talk about that, we can dive into that from some of the scenario planning that we're looking at. But again, broadly, the reason we're going to solve this problem is because of the fact that effectively everything we do from a production standpoint is some sort of IT problem that needs to be solved, right? From the beginning that someone is writing a script, typically they're writing it on a computer. There's a few people that write them on typewriters, but not many, right? So you're already using a compute system to create the work. Then we go into previs, and that's an IT situation. Then we go into pre-production, and that typically is an IT situation with some physicality, right? Sets, props, studio operations, all that stuff. But a lot of it is IT. When we go into production, the cameras we use are actually computers with lenses on them. This I know fairly intimately because I helped build one of them. They are actually IT devices. And in fact, they record digital data, which moves into a compute infrastructure almost immediately. We can, and we've been doing this for many, many years, well before this, completely remote that operation. We can take data from the camera as it's being shot, feed it over networks, and feed it into post-production, right? And we already, as a regular basis, work quite intimately with vendors, and you had a list of a lot of them that we work with. Method is a good example, Weta, ILM, all the others, on a completely remote basis, sharing files back and forth. And then when you get to distribution, that's an IT thing too, right? Because digital projectors are basically computers, and the digital files that get served with them through KDMs are a computer IT problem. So everything that we get to take advantage of is, we are sort of, this is Revenge of the Nerds, right, on steroids. We took over that business, the technical people, and we were able to provide all those services that we already used beforehand. Now we're just accelerating that because of the lack of the ability to do this in a work environment. So the home environment has become the work environment. Where there's an interesting sub-conversation that I think is really interesting to talk about is the data providers, and hopefully my internet is fairly good and you're seeing me okay and it's all working, and I've got lots of computers and VR, AR gear all running at the same time. But,
okay, sure.
Yeah, but you know, we're all paying domestic home internet rates, and some of us have the fastest ones, but it's still well under $100 a month typically for internet. And how are those companies that deal with corporate internet dealing with the scenario when there is no corporate internet now? People aren't going to an office environment to work, and we fed it all into a home environment, but probably lacking. And I'm sure you guys have had situations where you're on a video chat or doing something remotely with a lot of computer stuff, and everything works except the pipe in and out because everyone in your neighborhood is on it at 1 p.m, right? Mm-hmm. So we solved that problem. We've literally turned everything we do in the office into something at home. That's kind of an interesting thing to think about. So I guess maybe that's my opening silo on all this.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, Ted, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the things we covered before, which was like, you know, the fact that lots of the pipeline of production has gone digital, and you were mentioning game engines, and so you know, we're talking about products and a solution, but you know, for those people that are out there that you know, want to prepare, learn new things, you know, we want to get people back to work. Could you maybe touch on, you know, digital production as it's come to evolve, and then the thing you were mentioning about the game engines, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, for anybody that's watching or listening, if you haven't had a chance to check out the latest Unreal Engine 5 demos running on the prototype PlayStation 5s, it's kind of jaw-dropping to see what they're doing on consumer hardware right now. And we, as a movie studio building effectively non-gaming content, are taking full advantage of that, right? So we're starting to plug into that. We're looking, and it's not just our studio, all the studios are doing this in force now, right? At LED walls and advanced sort of visual backdrops that can actually feed in and out of a game engine so things can be run in real time. It takes a methodology change a little bit in terms of what is a VFX pipeline, what is shot on a green screen, what can be shot live and effectively comped live as you're shooting it. So if people are in the movie side of this and are familiar with translights and things where we hang these giant backgrounds to make it look like we're not shooting at a studio, those are static backgrounds, right? They've been used for years. We effectively are doing that now with dynamic backgrounds. So we have these high density LED walls that we put up in these large volumes in a soundstage or in various environments, and we can effectively build reality that way. And it can be changeable and morphable literally in real time. So the change that actually has to happen is really interesting. You have to treat visual effects assets and game assets more like sets and props and art department, because you actually have to have them built and finished when you're ready to shoot. Just like you need the set built before you shoot, or else you don't have a set, right? So treat the assets like sets and understand that that's where the resources and the time and the energy and scheduling need to go. Then that's a win for everybody. And we can do this, and we're already doing this, and all the studios are doing this. To your point, Dan, about training, a lot of people that are waiting for their work dynamics to kick back in, of which, you know, Paramount is fully closed as a studio right now. We're certainly doing work, and we're doing work on animation. We're doing post-production on a lot of our movies that have already been shot. You mentioned Top Gun. You know, that's fully using all your tools and all your and accessing all that stuff. But it's interesting to look at just from an ad hoc kind of career morphing or career altering moment that this crisis sort of brings to bear, is if anybody's at all interested in understanding and looking at that more, these game engines are free to use. They are easily downloaded on, you know, mostly PC environment, but if you're a Mac environment, you can still learn them on a Mac environment. And there's tons of training resources, many of them for free online, that you can sort of get yourself up to speed and at least learn and understand what these tools are. Maybe that's a career for you, or maybe you just further your educational skills so that when you start to get it back into production, you have a little better sense of, you know, we certainly can't get a crew on a plane and shoot and go travel here, but we can fake this and recreate this. And I did a lot of discussion and learning, and I spent some time in my quote unquote off time about learning what game engines and these VFX pipelines can do. So now I'm better suited, whether you're an executive or a producer or a post-production supervisor, or even someone that's working in the physicality of production. You know, if you're a DP or a dolly grip or a best boy or you know, anything that works physically on set, and you just want to learn more about this, you'll be better suited to handle a novel world that we live in. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Chris, did you have some ideas for people where you know, they can connect in, learn more about Studio Cloud, learn more about the production pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I think also in parallel to what Ted was saying there, as individuals, we also see studios pivoting. And where some studios were, you know, specialized in just visual effects or creature work or what have you, they're becoming more generalists in terms of, you know, some of their great talented CG artists are now being devoted to some animation work. And, you know, we're all being creative as creative individuals on how do we keep people working and adapt. We're seeing, you know, other studios that have started to invest in some of the virtual production. You know, for, you know, it's quite plausible that we're not going to rush to go on location for shoots, and instead we'll have to create virtual sets, much to what Ted was describing. And so some of the, you know, leading visual effects studios are investing in their tools and pipeline in order to help support, you know, the parent studios like Paramount and others in order to go ahead and move forward with how we're going to get more images in the can so that we can keep images in front of the audiences. How do we create more content? To what you're asking specifically, Dan, on the individuals, you know, we're seeing a lot of artists that have been traditionally contract artists at the animation and visual effects studios, and normally part of payroll, are thinking about how they can maybe become independent contractors. So a division within CW Studio Cloud is our studio crew. And so we've been working with contractors or working with artists to become independent contractors such that they can collaborate with the studios and be hired for work, but at arm's length, so they can basically not have to be part of a payroll, but instead could be consultative contractors and be on a payment term sort of scenario through service providers like ourselves. So one of the biggest impacts we're seeing is the cash flow crunch that studios are and everybody is facing. And so if we can be more creative with extending payment terms, deferring payments, and leveraging some scale, I think that I'm seeing all of the vendors and partners out there are looking for ways to really support the industry. And I think that we have to be more creative about that. So if you want to learn more about it, definitely check out cw.ca/Studio Cloud. We've done some great render studies together with Intel, so there's information there. But really, yeah, it's just about supporting the industry and getting everybody back on their feet.
Awesome. Yeah, so I see that we got a bunch of questions coming in. Maybe we take a few of those on, and then you guys game?
Sure. My first question as I look at my background is I wonder what's in this. I got one of my little side offices, and I've got like all this junk from my like history of all this work. I'm like, I'm pretty curious. What's in this thing? Oh, it's just nothing important. It's just
little bars. What?
I thought it was going to be something really cool, but I'd be like, look at this, what I found. But no.
All right, so we got our first question, which is, how does Studio Cloud work with DAM systems such as Fifth Kind, also used by Disney/Marvel?
Yeah, so because somebody else was speaking during that time, I tried to answer it during the chat. So let me make sure I'm consistent in my answer. So yeah, we basically provision a dedicated bare metal server, Intel Xeon server, in an air gap scenario. So our client studios can bring to bear any of the software that they have, not having to change any of their pipeline or adapt to containers or microservices. Because they're connecting over Dart fiber, we're really just an extension of their on-premises experience. And then the way that we provide the service is in a fashion that more is akin to ownership, in terms of we look at what it would be for a studio to purchase over, say, a 3-year time horizon, and then we just build it into a monthly OpEx model. So we leverage the CW investment and finance it, essentially, which it also comes in be a critical part of any of the media entertainment clients. Is sometimes definitely cash flows are a challenge. So helping clients shift to an OpEx model is very attractive, but then not having to enforce any changes, containers, microservices, any of the kind of traditional hyperscale and agility type models. We're basically providing what I think Michael Dell termed the largest cloud in the world, which is the on-premises cloud. And a cloud is just, the server's got to be somewhere. And so we're putting them in a I guess, at the edges of the internet to be close within, sub 1 millisecond latency to connect via Dart fiber directly to the client studios. So thumbs up, leverage Fifth Kind if you like, and any other asset management solution. A lot of our clients are leveraging Shotgun in the visual effects space, and tying that together with their production storage like Isilon and their server and rent workstation. So yeah,
cool.
Great.
Yeah, I got another. Did someone have another comment? Okay, I got another question about requirements and Kevin, you mentioned tablets, and so I got a question about requirements. What's required? What kind of bandwidth? What do you recommend for someone who's trying to get one of these work from home situations working? Do you have to have fiber to the house, or what do you think, Kevin, is the minimum requirement?
Yeah, I think those are great questions, and those questions I field pretty often around, you're sending essentially, a video stream from one point to another, right? So you're sending it from either the private cloud, the public cloud, on premise with a physical bare metal workstation to an endpoint where, the bandwidth is variable, specifically to what we're dealing with today, where you have the whole family home when you're working, feeding off of streaming music, streaming video, connecting to Wi-Fi, taking up bandwidth. it's very important to know, what are the requirements for a solution very similar to this. And the answer to that question is, it all depends on the workload. If we've got, post-biz people doing editing on projects, you have a certain set of tools that you use. I'll call out a couple, Adobe, Avid, 3ds Max, Maya, Nuke. All those applications have a window inside of them, and then they have a tool set around them. Most of the time what we see is that, if somebody's editing something, they have a small window of video playing back in the corner, and then they have a tool set that surrounds that. How Teradici does the magic behind PC over IP is, we take the changes to the screen. So if there's static text that's on the screen that's not changing, we're not sending that across the line. So therefore, it's conserving bandwidth at a rapid rate. So unless the entire screen is filled with video that's changing, your bandwidth requirements are actually pretty low. For a typical 1080p to 2K workload would be between 10 megabits per second to 50. And if we're talking about 4K UHD or 4K 10-bit HDR, then you're looking at the hundreds to 200s possibly if you're doing full screen playback. But again, that's all variable. It all depends on what the artist is doing in session. If they're active in full screen playback, it's going to be higher. If they're using a tool set that has a small video playing and tools surrounding it, and they're manipulating a slider bar, it's going to be a lot less. And what we like to focus on also is, packet loss is very important too. And when you're looking at Wi-Fi, that usually has a high level of packet loss. Whether you're in your home or in a coffee shop or somewhere remote, we see that you're going to have a subset of that. With our PC over IP algorithm, we actually handle that very, very well to be able to predict pixels with our UDP transport, to be able to make sure that there's efficiencies gained when you still have high packet loss and a little bit of bandwidth. Our algorithm actually downgrades the quality based upon what's available instead of disconnecting the session. So we keep the integrity of the session going and keep the artist working depending upon what they need. So if there's an artist that has, the requirement is full color all the time, they don't mind if they disconnect if they have some kind of, bandwidth issue. Then that's fine too. But we have the ability to be able to either tune that manually, or we have an auto tune inside of our algorithm. And it's pretty amazing when you think about the efficiencies that are gained, in this pandemic with remote work, where traditionally, if we didn't have a solution or our customers didn't have that solution in place, they would have to copy files back and forth between the machines that they took home from the office and the data center with where those projects reside. The amount of time that it actually takes to copy large project files from one location to another is pretty dramatic. And the efficiencies gained behind not having to copy files, but actually editing the files that are still in the data center where they were when they were working from the office is pretty amazing. It's hours a day that's being saved by not having to copy things back and forth. And when you think about the fact that when somebody does copy something to their workstation, you've got a security issue there too.
Right.
That is a laptop or a desktop that maybe doesn't have the amount of security that you're really looking for in your organization. You could take a USB stick and copy files and move them places. With PC over IP and Cloud Access software, we just send the pixels to the endpoint. There's no data that's being sent to that. They can't copy data out of the data center. It all still resides inside of there. So from a collaboration, security, and efficiency standpoint, we've seen a lot of gains with some of our enterprise customers.
Cool. Yeah. So security is paramount importance as people work from home. Next question I'll direct towards Ted. Tracy, I'm going to paraphrase. It really comes down to what's your view on how the studios are going to move from efficiencies to opening up? Is it going to be social distancing of the actors, one actor per scene in a shot, and we merge it all up in the back end? What's your vision for how things are going to progress here?
Yeah, I think, and we've had a lot of discussions about this and continue in our virtual meetings and whatnot on almost a daily basis. But I am a big believer that when you have this much dramatic change and people get comfortable with technology at a level that maybe they hadn't used on a regular basis before, but some of us had, that people don't go back. People find the efficiencies, they find the joys, they find the benefits, and they want to keep using them. So the idea that at some point we will turn back the clock and go back to exactly the way it was before, I think that's a fool's errand. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to find various levels of requirement to need to be in physical proximity and physical space.
Right.
And they'll be segmented to absolutely you cannot do this job remotely, to you can do some of this job remotely, to you can do a lot of this job remotely, to you can do all of this job remotely, right? And I think that's the new normal, and I think that's what's going to happen. When it comes to the actual art of physical production, the actual art of gathering together to film something, that's the most interesting challenge with the most interesting discussions right now. And a lot of this is public. A lot of it is obviously there's a lot of internal discussions about exactly how we're going to execute this, and there's liabilities and all kinds of things about. So remove that from the equation. But just on the public standpoint, perhaps some of you have read some of the stuff that Jason Blum is talking about doing with a low budget crew at Universal, in sort of like a sequestered form where people will stay at a local hotel and they will be like within a safe practice zone. A lot of the discussions that we're looking at is how do you take that even further? And would a crew and cast and certain executives be willing to essentially go to summer camp together to work on a production?
Right.
That you will live and work for the duration of this production, right? Within whatever environment that is, whether that's in a studio environment, and we'll set up trailers and that's where you're going to sleep. And basically you will have 2 weeks to quarantine before on site with all your brethren. And then once you're cleared, you're now in a work environment. And your work and home is the same thing. Kind of like we're doing now in the home and work at home is the same thing, except your work is you go to work at the studio, you go to work on location, and you go, and in the evenings you basically socialize with your friends there that are working together, and you wake up the next day and you do it again, you wake up the next day and you do it again until that job is over. Then you quarantine again for 2 weeks and then you leave. It's an interesting thing to think about, who's willing to accept that as a way to get back to physical production. And again, when you boil it really down to the reality of what remote production is sort of like that anyway, especially if you're going to a fairly like remote place to shoot something, right? You kind of don't leave. Now, sometimes you leave on the weekends or you get a break or you get on hiatus, right? So that will change. But the idea of living and working together as a group is a viable thought process that I think has a lot of promise, and I think can allow a lot of the freelance crews to get back to the art of production.
I think also what Trace was asking there on the studios themselves and how they're like on the post-production side. I think that most of the studios were set up to leverage remote workstations, and the IP was there. And it was really a mechanism of whether it was artists with laptop or workstations under their arms going home, and just leveraging every type of mechanism to get the workflow in place. The technology didn't stand in the way. That was the quote unquote easy part. For the longest time, it's been about the security. It's been about like whether or not that we'll feel good about it and we're allowed to do it. And now this is like, I think a lot of other paradigm shifts, like we saw back at the transition from the film camera to digital camera, and some of the deliverables that would be made on a high HDCAM SR tape transitioning to file-based workflows. It took the tsunami in Japan to wipe out all of that tape stock. That then everybody shifted to a file-based workflow. Was the file-based workflow better and it worked? Yes. But it had not been adopted because, well, it's the generally accepted norm to do it this way. So I'm having conversation with heads of studios on a daily basis now where they're discussing, well, I think for the safety of my team, I'm going to reduce the footprint of my studio space. So I'll have fewer artists coming in, and I'll have other artists that have we've deemed to be very productive working remotely. I've had a number of my clients run polls of their artists to see how they think it's working, how the productions are going. And some are commenting that they're seeing, more than 100% productivity because they're not being interrupted with the water cooler chat, and they're able to, this is, this ability to work from home makes it better for in some ways a work-life balance, or can accommodate taking care of that pet or that family member, what have you. So I think overall, not just media entertainment, but our company provides technologies to all verticals. And prior to the pandemic, I think it was about 3% of the population works from home. And the expectation is across all verticals that at least 25% of people will begin working from home. And in our industry, I think it's going to be much, much higher. I anticipate we're going to see over 50% of artists deciding that I'd prefer to be a freelancer and move from project to project, work from home. And from the counter side, the studios are like, well, if I can do this and I can be productive, why do I want to pay for this commercial lease space? How about I put my investment into cloud-based data center infrastructure instead, and go this route? So I think that this is definitely the trajectory that we're all going to see.
Yeah, I think that's well thought, well spoken. That's exactly right. That's what we're seeing as well. I also think it's kind of interesting to think about some of the brain drain and exhaustion of this style of communication. So I see my buddy Phil from USC is here, and he's texting a little bit. Some of the things we're looking at and now looking at much more intensely are VR and AR tools for collaboration and social meetings and virtual whiteboarding sessions and virtual production, so that we don't just have to do it on a laptop or a bunch of big monitors or whatever kind of level of sophistication. To your point, Dan, you want more stuff, right? And if you can virtualize that stuff and have as many big monitors as you need, and have virtual production tools that you can scout a location, do a location, view a location, set up cameras in a location, prepare for that production, which has already been happening, right? This virtual production in VR thing is a real thing. There are many articles and many public discussions about how that's working well. There is no reason that can't happen in a fully remote environment. These are relatively low bandwidth tools that can be functional within a remote environment. So, the idea of having to stare at a laptop screen or a PC screen all day long, if you can break that up with a virtual screen, whether that's a mixed reality screen or virtual reality screen, for a couple of hours a day, it's going to help your brain function. It's going to help your physicality. You'll be able to walk around in a meeting and discuss things. There's some interesting things going on there that we're pursuing with greater interest these days.
Yeah. And while we were talking, I got an instant message from my manager saying, create a production workstation at home, maybe 2021, Dan. So this segues well into, I just wanted to plug that this is the virtual Hollywood production and immersive entertainment track. So stay tuned for more panels in this segment. Our next one will probably be centered around immersive entertainment. And one of the areas that Lynn covered in her talk is around, what we call immersive media. And one of those things is volumetric video, where, there's 360 and there's AR, VR, and there's different technologies. One is volumetric, where you get a full sphere multi-camera capture of an entity, and Intel's invested in this large studio space in LA. And going through the archives, I figured out who the person is. It's Ted. So we were cross Ted in one of the photo shots. So maybe we can invite you back. But with that, I wanted to just come back to the panel and basically thank everybody for joining. Thank you, Kevin, Chris, Ted. Any parting words?
Pleasure.
I love talking about metric stuff. It's that's a whole other topic of discussion. But we did a project last year that was very successful, and I'm involved in multiple tentacles around that. We're actually doing a pro bono project right now. If anybody's interested, you can send me an email or connect to me, that are essentially beaming musicians into your living room via the AR layer within the iOS technology stack, and it's working pretty well. I mean, it's still work in progress, but it's working. So it's a pro bono project that I was able to help a foundation get going. It's an interesting piece of the puzzle.
Awesome. Love to check it out.
That's great. Yeah, and one of the things, I just wanted to comment on, and it piggybacks a little bit to what Chris was saying is, we need to find the light side of things today, right? And one of those things is the ability to change the quality of life for the people who have to work at home, aren't in the office anymore. And one of those things is the ability to be able to do what we're allowing our customers to do, which is be able to have these people working from home. The efficiencies, one, that are gained by doing that within the organizations, but two, the quality of life that we need to change for our people now that they're making a new adjustment into a new workspace, essentially. Talking about the fact that, specific to LA, the ecological impact of people not having to drive to work every day, them not having to sit in, their car for an hour and a half to 3 hours every single day, going back and forth between the office and back to the house. And those are the things that we talk to our customers about a lot. And, I'm feet on the ground, right? Before this happened, I was in LA every week. I live in Denver, but I traveled to LA every week, and I talked to all the studios, the heads of the studios, and I talked to them about some of the things that would drive their business forward by using our product. But now it's a different discussion about how we can make the lives better of the artists that now need to work from home. And those are the things that we like to focus on with a lot of our customers is how can we help them and enable them to have a better quality of life now that their workspace has changed. So we're happy to provide that for our customers and chat about that at any time. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah. And Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting time. I think that don't let life get in the way of making art, and see how we can keep everybody working and enjoying the brighter side of life, I think. Yeah.
For sure. Great. Well, we'd like to once again thank Digital Hollywood for inviting us to make some presentations here on Intel Day. Just appreciate you guys joining. Intel, we're lucky to be working. Intel's trying to help, both our customers and, people around the world. You can check out intel.com. We've got some funds to tap into resources to help people. So, education, training materials, we want to, help people learn new skills and find new ways to access all kinds of new opportunities. So once again, thanks everybody, and signing off from Table 1 here in Oregon.